Aw, not alright. Bloody Band-Aid isn't playing this evening. Yeah, it's probably because Elden Ring is out, and therefore Bloodborne has to be put on the back burner. Huh? What's that? Huh, a new band is playing at the round table tonight. Now that sounds interesting. And it says here that they are going to perform a theme-appropriate intro song for a Holy Damage only video made by Oh, that's me. Son of a gun. Well, better go and check this out then. Alright, Elden Ring. It has a new damage type called Holy Damage, so that makes you wonder what it would be like to go through the game doing nothing but pure holy damage. So no split damage of any kind. As there are a few spells and even melee weapons that would allow you to do that. So, can you beat Elden Ring with pure holy damage only? Well, no. Okay, but can you make a viable build out of it then? No. Oh, well, can you at least make an interesting build out? No. Is it worthwhile doing? No. So why not? Well, because holy damage, at least in PvE, it sucks. And I mean it really sucks. The spells suck on my left ball and the weapons suck on my right ball. And I actually went into this challenge thinking it would be an easy little gimmick run just to get things started. But it turned out that staying at level 1 is way more effective than a pure holy build, even at 60 faith. It really is that freaking bad. So get your little buttholies ready, because we're going to dive right into this mess. Well, we cannot start with any holy damage to begin with, and although the prophet starts with the highest faith, it also looks kinda stupid, so we're going to start as the confessor. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong way to say it. We're starting off as the Yeah, that's better. Well, because we don't have any source of damage yet, we have no way of fighting against the grafted the grafted tutorial boss. But at least we can deny him the satisfaction of killing us. Now, you might think that our first source of holy damage would come from Carly Claws, but holy pots are off limits in this run, because any type of pot does a little bit of physical damage as well. By the way, you might think it would be a fitting run for me as a Dutch guy to do a pot only run. You know, like only fire pots or something. But you know, then backlogs wouldn't know what to do with this game, so I have to be a good neighbor in that sense. So, no holy damage yet, so therefore let's acquire our horse and meet our quote-unquote waifu. Yeah, sorry, I don't really consider Melina the waifu of this game. I mean, she is nice and all, but I wouldn't put a ring on it. Contrary to the witch Rani. So even though she has nothing to do with this run, I just had to go and simp for her. Well, then again, there are few things as sacred as marriage. And perhaps some of you don't consider her your waifu because she first introduced herself as Rana, and therefore you cannot tell which witch is which witch. But fortunately, I have quite some experience dealing with that issue by now. Or maybe you haven't played Bloodborne before, and you're turned off by her being a doll. However, I think that her having 4 hands already provides the perfect recipe for a healthy marriage. I mean, she can use one hand to give you an old-fashioned, massage each testicle individually, and still have one hand left to tickle your asshole. But granted, this video is not about holy matrimony, it's about holy damage. So how do we acquire a source of pure holy damage if we cannot even attack anything yet? Well, first let's just collect the basics. Golden seeds, sacred tears, and the flask of wondrous physic. And behind the church where we find the ladder, we also find a teleporter that transports us to Caelid, which will become very important in a minute. But first of all, this will automatically trigger Melina to invite us to the round table. And if we jump off the balcony, we can acquire the Cipher Pada, or however you pronounce it. Which is like 2 lightning bolts coming out of your wrist, but it actually does pure holy damage. So that's exactly what we need. However, we cannot wield it yet because it requires 30 faith. So we're pretty helpless against the invading phantom. Not that it's any different from any actual PvP experience I have. However, ironically, this weapon is probably only decent in PvP, because as you will see, the only benefit in PvE is that you can give the game a giant middle finger. And you will want to do that many times over. because this weapon's special attack has a very unexpected problem. But first things first, we need a shit ton of runes to acquire 30 faith. But fortunately, here in Caelid, there is a way to farm runes without having to attack anything. If you ride along this road, a ball will magically appear and try to roll over you. However, if you avoid it, it will drop over the ledge and provide you with almost 2000 runes. Well, sometimes. I'm not sure why, but it's also often the case that you don't get any runes. So it is kind of weird and inconsistent. But with some patience, we can acquire enough runes to level up to 30 faith. Meaning we finally have an actual way to do damage. However, life only becomes more difficult after your balls drop, so this little farming session was the easiest part of the run. Oh, and since we are close to Fort Faroth, we can acquire the Radagon Talisman that gives a free boost in health, stamina, strength and dex, so we don't have to waste runes on those levels. Moreover, we need the medallion piece anyway for later on in the game. But now we have a weapon, we need some upgrade materials. So let's head towards Liurnia. Moreover, if you go this way, we encounter the Teenage Mutant Bishop Turtle, Bishop in a Half... Okay. Well, it's an NPC who accepts prayer books for new spells and never leaves, unlike Brother Corrin does. And you gotta love it that they made this priest a turtle, because the ninja turtles are great for young children, and so are priests. But spells are for later, because as I said, we first need to upgrade our weapon. And an easy way to acquire somber smithing stones 1 to 4 are at the giant blacksmith on the road towards Caria Manor. So now we have a +4 special weapon already, and we haven't even fought a boss yet. But other than that, we need some appropriate fashion. However, we haven't got access to the best set in the game yet. And if I leave it up to my character, she would just run around in her underwear. Pfft, whore. Frost Stomp is not actually allowed in this run, but I picked it up anyway in case I would get stuck against the Godskin duo. But of course then they decided to nerf the Hoarfrost Stomp into oblivion, so it wouldn't have helped me out anyway. However, if you continue from here, we can make our way to the Finger Maiden outfit. Now that does require us to go past the Eye of Sauron, who tries to prevent us from becoming the Lord of the Elden Ring. It's an obvious Lord of the Rings reference and they think they can get away with it. It's madness inducing. Which also applies to the Spear of the Church invader we encounter where the Maiden set can be found. But as long as you light the Grace, you don't actually have to defeat him anyway. Well, the stupid hat and slippers don't really work that well, but it's the best we can do before we can enter the capital. Oh, and I think that the ladies who are watching can relate to this. You're all dressed up to go to a party and then one of your lady friends shows up in the exact same outfit. Yeah, well, one of us has to change now and it's not... what the fuck? She can actually attack? I legitimately didn't even know that. Well, actually I was going the wrong direction anyway because I forgot about the other half of the lift medallion. But I was headed towards the wrong castle. It's Fort Hive where the second piece can be found. But can you really blame me for getting confused? I mean, there are so many different castles in this world. I mean, there's Castle Morn, Redmane Castle, Stormvale Castle, Castle Sol, the Shaded Castle, Castle Grayskull, Baron's Castle. Heck, we even have a White Castle here in the lands between. It's all very confusing. But the whole point of gathering the medallions is to gain access to the Elder's Plateau. Because here we can find the Wrath of Gold incantation. I suppose the L was a typo, but this will allow us to create a giant holy explosion of pure holy damage. Also, if we quote-unquote talk with Goldmask on the bridge, not the most interesting conversation I might add, but if you tell Brother Corrin about it, then you can gain yet another holy spell from him. Yeah, a blind guy and a mute together. It's quite unfortunate. But what's even more unfortunate is that this spell requires intelligence. And so does a more suitable seal. So that will have to wait until later. So now we're almost ready to take on the first boss. You know, after several hours of in-game time already. That's kind of the nature of this game. So time for Stormvale Castle and what the hell? Oh goddammit, it took ages to farm this sword on my level 1 run and now it just randomly drops when you don't even need it. So an obvious issue we run into with Market is that he is resistant to holy damage. After all, he summons holy weapons himself. So even though we have a +4 special weapon, which is about the equivalent of a +12 normal weapon, the damage output is still a bit on the meh side. Moreover, this particular weapon has a really frustrating flaw. Its special attack not connecting for no apparent reason. Now it does good damage, but only if it chooses to actually connect with your target, which feels incredibly random. So I relied more on jump attacks, but this weapon also has very poor posture breaking potential. And although you can technically also break posture with enough rapid R1 attacks, but getting greedy in this game more than in the previous titles will get you hit given how aggressive the bosses can be, and how eager they are to roll catch you. But despite that, it didn't take that long before Market the Omen fell. However, a damage increase sure would be nice. And in the first church in Caelid, we encounter an NPC that drops the Scorpion Charm that increases holy damage. However, it also decreases your defenses. So although we get another talisman slot after Margit, if we equip it together with Radicant Seal as well, that would push our defenses into -20. Yeah, that's not gonna work. So I made a quick trip down the cave underneath the bridge near the first encounter with Podbody. Because if you defeat the boss there, you will get the Blue Dancer Charm, which increases your attack power based on weight. And the Cypherpada weighs nothing, the maiden set is obviously very light, and don't you even dare commenting about the weight of my character. However, then I discovered that the Blue Dancer Charm apparently only boosts physical attack power, unlike Flint's Ring. So we have a shitty weapon with damage that isn't easy to boost, and its special attack misses randomly most of the time. Well, at least I made sure that Gostok would shut his pie holy, because he is essentially like Patches. In case you didn't know, he's the one that shuts you in with the knight that holds the key, and if you die in this area, he will actually steal your runes. So he is better off dead. Makes you wonder though, is the real Patches somewhere in this game? I don't know. Perhaps someone can let me know that in the comment section. But as you can see, now we can actually sneak up on the knight in this room. And because the Blue Dancer Charm is off the table, I decided to go and pick up the Claw Talisman to boost my jump attacks. Oh, and even more importantly, I made sure to farm the Commoner's Headband, because of the most important reason possible, fashion. Well, despite that I don't look like a holy maiden yet, but we're getting there. And I know that implies being an unmarried lady, but it's actually the special attack of this weapon that really puts the emphasis on the word miss. Like, how is that even possible? Like, what the hell? What is wrong with this weapon? So yeah, my most damaging attack hardly ever works. And my damage output already isn't great. So again, I had to rely on jump attacks, but even with the Claw Talisman, it's hard to actually stagger anything with this weapon. On top of that, I kind of realized that even though this is one of the easier bosses, I don't think I'm really all that skilled at this game yet. Because I wasn't performing all that well, I must say. Now granted, with this boss somersaulting all over the place, I was kind of scared of getting Godric rolled. But you know, I'm never gonna give up, so I am going to take him down by just running around him, and then after I beat him, I'll have some dessert with you. Well, actually, I don't have any frost grease in my inventory, so I guess I just told a lie and hurt you. Sorry, I'm a bit of a dick. Actually, it's much worse, because I merely pretended earlier on to not know that Patches was in this game. So that people would immediately spam comments about it in the comment section, which would make the video perform better in the algorithm. Mahahaha. Yeah, you wouldn't think I would be such an asshole, but actually I'm assholier than now. But yeah, after the Godric fight not going all that well, we definitely need some more power. And with all these runes burning a holy in my pocket anyway, I made sure that I had enough intelligence to wield the Communion Seal, which makes certain holy spells do extra damage, and it also upgrades with Somber Stones, which are easy to access. Also, if you go to the ruins north of the lift that takes you to the Altar's Plateau, after defeating a mini-boss, you can get this game's version of Lloyd's Sword Ring. And the good thing that this one gives a 10% damage boost to any type of damage. But we still don't get much benefit out of our Flask of Wonder Physic, and there are two very beneficial ones. The first one is easy to access in the Weeping Peninsula and gives you 10 extra levels in Faith. And the other one you get from an Earthtree avatar in Liurnia. And that one is, that one is not so easy to access. Fortunately, we've already been to the church where the maiden outfit could be found, and it's much easier if you start from there. And again, of course, it would be nice if the special attack actually connects, since Earthtree avatars are obviously resistant to holy damage. But fortunately, it doesn't have too much health, and its moveset is easy to deal with. Straight demon. Well, at least as long as you don't get stuck when running sideways to avoid projectiles. But the point is that this enemy drops tiers that increase several types of elemental damage, including one for holy damage. So, with extra damage and an upgraded seal for spells, it's time to continue with the boss fights. So let's head off into a wondrous academy for the training of magical girls.
All of our dreams will soon come true if we only try.
Well, something along those lines anyway. And believe it or not, we finally encounter a boss that isn't resistant to holy damage. Although the spells are a bit too slow for this erratic movement. So those were not all that beneficial. Fortunately, the special attack of the Cypherpada not only connects this time, but does really good damage. Unfortunately, I'm kind of a dumb dick and I tried to spam it, which obviously meant I got immediately punished for it. In fact, I'm such a dumb dick that in my first playthrough I misread the name of the boss. I thought that this wolf was Radagon himself, meaning that I thought this was Renala's husband. Yes, I legitimately thought that Queen Renala was a furry. Oh, I'm actually even more of a dumb dick, because I completely forgot about the talisman you find above this room, which increases casting speed, so that might have helped me out later on. But anyway, along the way to Queen Fury, we encounter an NPC, and again, it seems like the only thing this weapon excels at is fighting players in PvP who hide behind the shield. At least if the attack connects, it will go right through the shield. Unfortunately, after meeting all the magical girls, and Sailor Moon herself, this weapon went right back to mysteriously not connecting again. So therefore I had to rely on jump attacks instead. And you would think that at least it would be easier to break Renata's posture by doing that, but that literally happened only right before the end. So again, even with the Claw Talisman, this weapon is terrible for breaking posture with jump attacks.
Little Rani, my dear daughter, weave thy night into being.
Now, surely one thing this weapon and my spells would excel at is fighting the undead. I mean, that's literally what holy damage is advertised to be effective for. However, even against a bunch of regular enemies, I almost got my ass handed to me. So is it becoming clear yet how absolutely fucking worthless a pure holy damage build is? Because it's going to get even worse. By the way, this merchant actually sells a torch that does holy damage. Although, like other torches, it is split damage, so it's not allowed. Ironically, I'm pretty sure it would outclass both anything I currently have or anything I will acquire later on. At least now we can head towards the capital, so it's a lot of traveling by horse. Here. You know the sound that a horse makes. Well, speaking of horses, despite being a sentinel, the Draconian Tree Sentinel is not that resistant to holy damage. Probably because he uses fire and lightning, and you can't make him resistant to everything after all. Still a very difficult enemy for being a mere mini-boss. Fortunately, I used daggers on my first playthrough, meaning I had quite a lot of trouble with this guy. And that forced me to learn his moveset quite well, because he has some sneaky delayed attacks, including a delayed fire breath from his horse when you get too close to him. Also, even though it's not applicable to this playthrough, but in principle you could cheese him with Rod and just wait at a distance for him to die. But you know, I will leave those kind of tactics for players who do their gaming during the weekends. Oh, hi. So, now we have access to a beautiful area, but also one that legitimately pissed me off during my first playthrough, since I got completely lost here. Therefore, I am morally obligated to give this place the middle finger. Yeah, you know, I think I can do better than that. Oh fuck! Oops. Well, that kind of ruins the moment. Well, if you are still having trouble finding a way through this area, then let me show you a quick way to get through it. In fact, after the Morgott fight, you can jump down here as well, and you are directly in front of the gate that you will need to go through. But on your first trip, as long as you can avoid the Earth Tree Avatar, you can make it safely to the next race. Then from there, you need to actually get upon the Stone Dragon. Yeah, shocking, I know. In fact, on my first playthrough, I literally got on top of there out of pure desperation, and I still managed to miss the spot where you need to drop down. Yeah, not the best of times. However, before we continue, we need to go back to the previous race, but jump down this time. Because there we find a little church next to the demon mask wearing Capra demon. And here we find the fashion of all fashion, the deathbed dress. And also some fat armor, but it is about the dress. Unfortunately, Via's panties are cut content, but at least we can purchase Renata's pajamas to wear underneath it. I mean, a deathbed is still a bed, and if you're going to your eternal slumber, you better make sure that you're comfy-wumpy. But other than looking like a holy maiden, it is time to acquire my Ace in the Holy. A weapon very similar to the Cypher Padder, but one that doesn't constantly fucking miss everything with its special attack. If we go into the building that turns out to be the real-life version of the Round Table Hold, this would be a great place for a console, by the way. But in the room where we normally would encounter the Divine Peace sign, this time we find the Coded Sword, which is essentially a lightsaber. And if you managed to find it before but couldn't wield it, then I find your lack of faith disturbing. After all, it only needs 20. But basically, it's like a regular straight sword that does pure holy damage. And although its special attack is slow, at least it doesn't arbitrarily miss like with our previous weapon. Yeah, it is a bit boring though, but at least not so goddamn ineffective as everything else we used so far. Well, a huge emphasis on it not being as ineffective, because this sword is honestly terrible as well.
Not great.
Well, at least by paying a visit to the old Altus tunnel, we can acquire the somber smithing stones necessary to upgrade to +6. Oh, and since we are in this area anyway, I just had to go and visit the volcano area to sneak in my usual Snake Eater reference. After all, there's a nice tall ladder here. So, I'm still in a dream, Snake Eater. So, and then we get... Oh, there's another ladder. Okay, I'm still in a dream, Snake Eater. But then we get... God damn it, there's another one. I'm still in dream, Snake Eater. So, and God damn it, not another one. I'm still in a dream, Snake Eater. No, make it stop. I'm still in a dream, Snake Eater. Well, at least now we have a +6 coated sword. And on top of that, although the shade version of Godfrey has more resistance to holy damage than the other elemental damage types, his defenses are very similar. I have done some testing on him, and he has a very slight weakness to lightning, about the same defenses against magic and fire, and only a very slight resistance to holy damage. So all in all, we are actually doing decent damage against this boss. Moreover, because of his moveset, it's both easy and effective to sneak in jump attacks. In fact, I was playing it a little safer than necessary, because I tended to go for jumping R1s, because when I did this on level 1, I used the Morningstar, which has a little more recovery time after jumping R2. But with the straight sword type, if you time it right, you can safely do jumping R2 attacks. So that means extra damage with the Claw Talisman and a lot of posture damage. So all in all, this fight worked out fine. Although I have no idea how you could possibly find the right time to safely use an incantation against a fast moving boss like this. And that's not exactly an uncommon problem in this game, because there are some really aggressive bosses, especially the one coming after this. But despite all of that, I did went and pick up another prayer book for the Teenage Mutant Bishop Turtle, because it has another incantation that inflicts pure holy damage. Unfortunately, it has a very high intelligence requirement. So I actually went to respec my character to be able to wield it. But despite the increase in intelligence, that certainly wasn't a smart decision. Because Jesus Tap Dancing Christ is this spell slow. So how could you ever safely use this against a fast moving boss? As I said just now during the fight against Godwin. Godfrey. Jesus, there are so many gods in this game. And we're also using the power of the gods and the golden order of the gods. Can we have a little less god, maybe? Well, on the contrary, now we have more god. And yeah, as I said, slow spells against a hyper-aggressive boss are not even effective during the best attack opportunities. Moreover, even if I had a faster casting time, there would be no point in doing it anyway. Because you could literally just hit him several times with the sword in that time and do more damage. So I just cannot figure out any way to do anything useful with these incantations. I mean, I'm really trying to make something interesting out of this build, but these spells are just so goddamn ineffective. Even though you could use them, there's no reason you should. So I decided to just respec again and stick to a stupid lightsaber. And you would think that would make this a very straightforward run, given that we're essentially just using a straight sword that does pure holy damage. But even with my high level of faith, I do way less damage than I did on my level 1 run. And yes, I know that Bleed and Frost are kind of overpowered, but the individual hits of my Morningstar already did more damage than the Coated Sword. It really is that bad. So this fight just went on and on and on. So I eventually just tried to squeeze in a special attack because I got impatient. But yeah, that one is also too slow, as you probably already expected. Well, at least afterwards I could punish him by sitting on his face, until I realized that actually would be a reward, if you ask me. But maybe this run would have one last saving grace, because there is a weapon in the tower along the way to the mountains, which I actually had to come back for because I didn't even know it existed until I looked it up. But it's a weapon that is actually Melina's dagger, that has a special attack that does pure holy damage, and looks really anime if you use it against Malekith especially, when he's doing his own jumping projectile attacks. Would it be functional though? Yeah, obviously not, but what would you expect by now? So I thought I would give myself a benefit by using the Stake of America skip to get early access to the snowfield, and then acquire a whole bunch of runes by cheesing Moog, but unfortunately that has been patched. Well, the skip at least. And the same goes for cheesing the camera giant with gravity. That also no longer works. So rip my usual Desert File gravity reference. Guess I will have to save that for a gravity only run. Well, at the very least I could upgrade my coated sword to +9 before fighting the camera giant. And what do you know, he's actually not resistant to holy damage. So my damage output was quite good. Fancy that. So I initially thought that this fight wouldn't be much of a problem. Well, other than the camera of course. However, without Bleed and Frost, despite the fact that visually he has only about a third of his life bar left in the second phase, experientially it is like a complete second health bar that just doesn't want to go down. So although it is much safer to attack him from behind in the second phase, that really wasn't an option. But yeah, then I realized that I actually kind of had no clue whatsoever on how to fight the second phase the quote-unquote intended way, where you attack his hands and the eye. And on top of that, actually hitting his hands is a massive pain in the dick. And although it is a weak point, the eye doesn't even take that much damage. So yeah, all in all, it took me almost an hour of attempts to actually defeat the camera, and the giant along with it. So despite the fact that my damage output was much better in this fight, it is still the case that you fare better with a level 1 character that has Bleed and Frost. So maybe there was a conversation during development that went something like this. So like, hey Mr. Miyazaki, I have this damage type here, should it be good or bad? And Miyazaki asks, is it Bleed or Frost? No? Okay, well then make sure that it sucks. Well, maybe in future videos we can check out Lightning and Fire. And speaking of fire and things that shock you, then Melina offered to do some really drastic gardening. So rip waifu, I suppose. Well, not really, because Rani is still alive out there. Oh, and by the way, Melina suffers from the similar name issue as well. I mean, Melina, Melania, Mikola. Let me guess, in the DLC they are going to introduce the triplets Melina, Meloina and Melina. Well, they can do what they want as long as they don't introduce a triple Godskin fight in the DLC. Because the Godskin duo without a cheese tactic is the most unholy of pure hellish experience that you can have in this game. And no, hitting them with a special attack through the pillars doesn't work. So therefore I tried a parry strategy, but I'm not very good at that. On my best attempt I only got about halfway. Well, at least since the patch, they did include Bernal as an NPC summon for this fight. So for the sake of preserving time, and on account of me absolutely giving no iota of a flying fuck at this point, I decided to just summon for this fight. And that definitely made one hell of a difference. Looking back, possibly I could have used sleep pods, but I'm not even sure if those work from splash effect alone, given that a direct hit would cause a few points of physical damage. After all, that's the reason why holy pods were not part of this run. And speaking of the latest patch, by the way, did they actually change the dragon? Because I don't think he ever attacked me in this final location where you get the Titanite slap when you kill him. So that's not a trick question like with patches the character before. I legitimately wonder if the patch actually changed the dragon. Also, speaking of Bernal, not only wouldn't he invade me without clearing the Volcano Manor first, but it's not clear what type of damage the Blasphemous Claw does in the first place, as it does inflict damage unlike other types of parries. But of course, using a blasphemous item when playing as a holy maiden wouldn't make sense anyway. But having said that, I sure as hell wish that I had it, because the fight against Malekith was one hell of a fight. Now of course for anime style purposes I used Melina's blade against him, and yeah, it looks cool. Has no functional purpose whatsoever of course. You know, like anything else I used in this run basically. But on top of the fact that Malekith is tough as nails to begin with, but his holy defenses are so high that with my fully upgraded coated sword and 60 faith, I could barely hurt him at all. So even though I could take damage against him, unlike when I faced him at level 1, but not only did I do way more damage to him, ironically at level 1, but in general, Malekith just thinks that your life bar is cute. After all, if you get hit by a projectile for example, you get stunned for a short while, meaning that you cannot avoid his next attack. So although he technically doesn't one-shot you, it does kind of boil down to the same thing. So we have all of that to deal with while having a really shitty damage output and no Blasphemous Claw to parry him with. So yeah, all there was left to do was to just get good at the fight. So I guess I need a little motivation from the waifu here. So Rani, can you help me out a bit? Yeah, that was a very intense fight. Almost 9 minutes in total length. But the worst thing is that he actually caused me to give up wearing my fancy dress. So that means that you're still taking an L, even when you end up victorious. Well, fortunately I did get a bit of relief against Otto Omniscient, even though this guy can actually be major trouble because he just spams infinitely. But fortunately, we can simply outspam the spammer.
Egg and spam, egg, bacon and spam, egg, bacon, sausage and spam, spam, bacon, sausage and spam, spam, egg, spam, spam, bacon and spam. I don't like spam! Spam, 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 spam.
It is a shame though that I don't have the stats to wield the staff, because it lowers enemies' defenses, including holy damage. Well, against Chad Chattingston McChat from Chatville, it's not even necessary. Because just like against the Shade version before, our damage is not even all that bad. And with all the jump attacks, we can get some nice staggers in. It doesn't mean it's easy though, because as alpha as he might be, I'm not going to take my dress off again. However, that does mean that you'll die in one hit when he grabs you. Well, I made my deathbed dress, now I got to sleep in it. Regardless, on my successful attempt, I almost managed to no-hit him. Unfortunately, he did manage to sneak in one final attack right before the end. Because god damn it does he like to delay his attacks. In fact, that is kind of the theme of this entire game it seems. So getting roll caught off guard is bound to happen. But despite all of that, this fight went very well. However, now the final bosses are remaining. The very essence of the Golden Order itself. So their holy defenses must be through the roof. Well, at least I have 781 AR with the boost of my flask. So that must still translate to a decent damage output. Yeah, this might be a problem. In fact, I've only beaten this boss once before. But it could be doable if I can make use of critical damage. So let's try a parry strategy. That's the critical damage? Oh, I'm fucked. Okay, let's make some calculations. Radagon has over 13,000 HP, so that's already a shit ton of hits. And then we have the Elden Beast with over 22,000 HP. And I suppose that his holy defenses are... Yeah, I think I'm done here. This whole game can suck on my middle finger. I'll go and spend some time in the Midnight Sea to contemplate what has become of me. It's not holy damage, it's holy shit.